Hello and welcome to another Indie Sunday. Today, it is the 100th video of Indie Sunday. It's been 1 year and 48 weeks since I started this as pretty much one of the first things I've done on this channel. I think I did like 3 or 4 games before this, and it's been going ever since without a single break in it. Though some weeks were better than others. We had some up and downs in there for sure. But overall, there were some fantastic games to be enjoyed. And I thought to celebrate that, as you can already see in the background, I do a tier list of all of the videos I have done in that time. When I say all of the videos, I've excluded basically second parts. So for example, Inside, for example, took like 3.5 hours and I uploaded that in 2 parts. So I've excluded the second part here. We'll rate both parts in one because how am I supposed to remember? I just forgot. I forgot about that. How am I supposed to remember what differentiated the 2 parts? Yeah, so we've got 96 videos to go through. As I said, 3 second parts, and I forgot about taking the anniversary update for Helltaker out, which I didn't even do on a Sunday, but for some reason I saved the thumbnail into that folder, so it's here as well. I'll just ignore that, and we'll just pretend that isn't there. So yeah, but the tiers are just, I thought I'd do a very basic one of, these were fantastic games, those were pretty good games, probably recommend watching them. Okay games where it's like, I just needed something to play on a Sunday. Bad games where I'm like, I thought this might be interesting and it wasn't. And games that were literally so forgettable that I'm like, oh, yeah, I did play this, didn't I? I looked through all of the thumbnails again when creating the thumbnail for this video, so I probably haven't forgotten any of them specifically, but I might not remember a lot about some of them. Also because some of them I literally played for like 20 minutes almost 2 years ago, so it's no surprise that I don't remember much of them. I also thought that this video could be a good guideline for maybe some of the newer viewers who weren't here since the beginning, and to maybe go back and watch some of the more exciting ones without having to go through the ones that maybe weren't that great. So, I think we've talked enough. The video could get quite long if I continue with that, so let's just get into it. They are sorted by alphabetical order, so not necessarily by the time I play them. Doesn't really matter, I think. That's just how they come straight out of my folder. That means we start with something that at the time of the recording literally isn't a published video yet, which should then be number 98, one of the very recent ones, which is Abriss. And honestly, I think we're going to have to start medium with this one and put it in the okay tier. It's not bad by any means. It still had some problems. Some of the menus weren't necessarily great. Also, performance-wise, the options menu was just, I don't know, not optimized, let me call it that. Now you got to realize that some of these were demos, some of these were early access games, so none of these, or a lot of these games, just can't be perfect yet at the time when I played them. But I'm just rating them in the state that they were back then. I will maybe consider future aspects, because I did continue with some of these games and actually played through the entire game later on my channel. So I think I might consider that experience, but maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just go with the experience of the game on that specific video. So we'll put that on okay for now. It wasn't bad, wasn't great. It was relatively short, I think, about 25 minutes. You don't have to watch it if you don't want to. Like, if you've got time for 5 videos, this is not one where I'd say, yeah, you definitely gotta watch this. We then continue to Accident, which is one of those kind of like simulation games in a way. And when I say simulation games, I mean games like I don't know, Farming Simulator is probably a bad example, but you've got like, I don't know, Baking Simulator, and you've got Cooking Simulator, and you've got, that kind of game. That's how it felt, at least in a sense. And yeah, similarly, I, that was also one of the very first, by the way. I think that was like number 4 or 5 or something along those lines. I honestly don't remember too much about it. I'm tempted to put it in either of those. But if I remember correctly, oh no, never mind. Put me here. I think there was one really bad mechanic that I actually now remembered. Where I don't remember what it was necessarily. It might have been like reanimation, and like putting air into someone, something like that. But you had to like drag your mouse across the whole table for it to somehow work. And so that really annoyed me. I remember that. The rest of it, there wasn't anything standing out where I was like, oh, this is fantastic. It wasn't horrible. And you'll see I have specifically left out a tier for games that are horrible, because if a game is actually horrible to the point where I'm like, I hate this, I want to stop playing it immediately, then you won't see it on Indie Sunday. There were games like that. I might have mentioned a game like that before on Indie Sunday, if you've watched the right video. But those don't actually make it to a published form. I just throw them away. So those have their own tier in my mind, but they weren't present on any Indie Sunday. So for now, this stays in the bad tier, because I don't think this tier will be very populated. Yeah, I think we might take another look at the end of the video to see if we need to move some things around, but for now, it stays there. We then have Estrella, also one of the more recent ones. Might have been like number 91, 92, something along those lines. Maybe even a bit later, maybe even 94. And I quite liked it. It was a roguelike in a way, combined with dice. And it seemed like a relatively typical, those card games a la Hearthstone, things like that, but with dice and not cards. And it was quite enjoyable. It wasn't amazing, but pretty decent. So I put it in good, actually. I did enjoy my time with it. I think I played it for about 40 minutes. And it's definitely a game where I'd recommend maybe play. I'm pretty sure I did play a demo. Did I note that down somewhere? I probably didn't. So you probably can try it out for free and see if it's to your liking. We then move on to Backbone, which we go back. We're kind of going back and forth with new and old. Backbone was also one of the first ones, around number 10, I would say. And I did enjoy Backbone quite a bit when I played it, although it did feel a little bit dragged out, but that's just my qualm with the whole genre. So I wouldn't put it necessarily as a negative or too big of a negative to that game in particular. Backbone is pretty much a 2D scroller in the way that, you can only move like left, right. I think you can move up as well, but it's pretty much a detective game. A lot of storytelling, some puzzles in there as well. I played that at a point where it was still in its demo state, and there wasn't actually a completed version out yet. I did actually then put it. I have sort of Steam categories for games that I played on Indie Sunday, where I want to keep an eye on them for when they release fully, or when there's maybe a few more reviews, and I can see, okay, what did people like or what did people think of the full game? And I can tell you, people did not like the full game of Backbone. They really didn't. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think it'd be too long to go into right now. But essentially, it's just not a very enjoyable game. I take it from those reviews. The demo itself, the prologue basically is what it was called, was pretty good though. But as I said, it dragged on a bit. There was like one puzzle in there right at the end, and that was okay. It wasn't great. So I think I'll put that one here for now as well. I might be subconsciously slightly influenced by the bad reception that it got afterwards, but I'm trying to rate it just purely based on what I thought of it when I played it. And I think that's okay. I'd probably put it ahead of Abriss slightly, but I wouldn't say necessarily that the position within a row has any significant meaning for this. Then we're moving on to Behind the Frame, which was actually about roughly in the middle, I'd say, probably around 50, maybe even 60. And I did enjoy that quite a bit. It's it's slightly puzzly in the sense that kind of like a point and click where you need to find specific things in a stationary environment. It had some, if I remember rightly, some odd places or puzzles where I wasn't entirely sure what I needed to do, which is always a bit difficult for me to say whether that's my fault or whether the game just didn't present it clear enough to me. Overall, I would also put it in the okay category. If anything, I'd put it here. Maybe I'll give some meaning to the position within a column, because it was pretty good. I think I don't remember what it cost, but it was about a 1 hour and a bit game, and I completed it. And yeah, story-wise, it was decent. Nothing outstanding, nothing bad. Nicely animated cutscenes here and there. Yeah, pretty okay. And then we move on to Besiege. And Besiege is in a category of games. It's actually a similar category to Abriss, but I only played Abriss for about 25 minutes, I think, and Besiege was longer than that. I think it might have been like 40 minutes or something. And I just don't really like that category of games, which is you have a billion different ways to build something that has a task to do something else. In both of these cases, the task is to destroy another object. It's just a type of game that I don't particularly like, because I feel like you have to really get into the mechanics of the game and really think about what you're doing if you actually want to play well in it. That's also kind of the reason why I don't really like super heavy strategy games, because usually when I play a game, it's not that I don't want to think at all, but I don't want to think very long about any one decision. And I like instant gratification, basically. So Besiege was just from the offset not a game meant for me, but I like to try out any kind of genre, well, almost any kind of genre on an indie Sunday, so I gave it a chance. And here's a problem for me, because I don't think it's a bad game, not at all. But I didn't enjoy it very much, so I should have thought about these categories beforehand. So I'm actually considering both of those aspects. I'm actually going to put it in okay as well, but I'm going to put it right over here. And yeah, also, these kinds of games tend to give me motion sickness, which doesn't help as well. Then we move on to Black Book, the prologue to that, and I'm straight away going to move that over here. This was another game similar to Backbone, where I put it in that specific category of I'm going to take a look and see how people enjoyed afterwards, after I finish playing through the prologue and when the game actually comes out. And people did enjoy this one. So I did think about maybe eventually going back to it. I haven't done so yet, though, so it can't go into the fantastic category. It had promise, I think. It was also very early on. I think that was in short distance away from Backbone, maybe slightly earlier, maybe slightly later. And it was kind of similar in style as well to, well, not that similar to Estrella, because it's not a roguelike, it's more a story game where you progress through different enemy maps in a way. But also it's kind of a card game in that sense. So there's the similarities. And kind of based on, what was it? Was that based on Czech mythology? Something like that. It might have been that. It might have been a different game. something Slavic mythology. And it was pretty good, fits in that category. Then we move on to Blind Drive. And Blind Drive was actually pretty good as well. So I'm even going to put it in here straight away. Not ahead of those two, but pretty good game. And it's one of, I think, 2 audio games that I've played, where essentially these are games not necessarily meant to be played, but meant to be playable for people with sight impairments. So if you're blind, for example, or you've got very bad vision, then you can play that game without any problems because it's purely audio based. You have some visual feedback actually. So if you can look at it and you do get something from it, but then, well, you can just close your eyes and completely play through the game. And it was pretty enjoyable. I think the dialogues were pretty funny in it. The core gameplay mechanics were okay, and the audio aspect worked, which is always nice because it meant that you can close your eyes and I could play the game without any problems, which is always a nice aspect because we'll get to a game later which works on the same system, but where I did have problems with playing the game purely audio based, but we'll get to that. Blind Drive, definitely a recommendation. If you want, check it out for sure. Then we got Bots Are Stupid, and I'm actually going to put that in Fantastic because I played it for an hour, and I have to be honest, I didn't go back to it yet, but it is something that I very much enjoyed playing because essentially, if you don't know, Bots Are Stupid is a game where you control a little bot. You have kind of like, imagine it like an obstacle course. You have a little map, jump and run, and you have to code, you have to write the movements of the bot, and then you sort of click go, and then the bot just does your movements that you've programmed it to do. And then you need to get the bot to the finish line. And I just really like that. It allows you to, well, essentially do a lot of playing around. You can have different ways of completing levels by getting a bit creative. Although I could imagine, I didn't get to a point like that, but I could imagine that it could be frustrating for me personally at a later point when levels start getting very complicated, because it then boils down to the you have to think about stuff for a long time again. But I could also see that not quite happening, where you're like, you just trial and error, just try this, try that, maybe one of those things works. Whereas in stuff like Besiege, usually that doesn't really get you anywhere because there's a pretty specific thing you have to, well, at least do to make what you're trying to do work. But yeah, great game. I think I played the demo, it was free, and I played like an hour and it wasn't over yet. So definitely a recommendation from me. Watch it, play it for sure. Then we've got Breakbond's Exile, which is another interesting one. And I'm actually going to put it right here because there's multiple reasons for it, and that rating might change in the future. Breakbond's Exile is about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours of gameplay. And at the time I bought it, I haven't actually checked up on it recently, but what the Steam description said is you can buy the game now for the price of, I don't remember what it was, might have been like €9 or something. And right now it's got 2 hours of gameplay. They're planning a lot more than that, but the price won't change or anything. So you can buy it now, and then you'll get all additional content for free. Now, in about, let me say 80% of scenarios, the additional content never comes because either the game developer got bored or just didn't have enough money, had other things to do. If that is the case, then so be it. I don't feel ripped off. I think it's a fair price for what the game was. But with the additional possibility of, there could be more in the future. What it was essentially is mostly a visual novel, slight mystery elements in there as well, but we didn't really get very far in the mystery yet. And the character designs were very nice. So that's something. So yeah, I'm going to put it into here for now. If there is more content in the future, I might play through it. Then we've got a failsafe, essentially. The game that I could play whenever I want if I have nothing else, which is Cubit, the Cube Escape Collection, which consists of... We've got one more game, kind of like it, down here, Samsara Room, which I think is by the same developer. And they're escape room games that are also pretty much point and click. So it's not like a lot of the modern escape room games where you're in like a 3D environment and you go around finding clues, which are actually not games. I haven't actually played any of them yet, but I already know those are not games that I would like, not at all. But the 2D ones, Cube Escape Collection, pretty decent as well. I'm actually only going to put it in okay, because it's not like I massively enjoyed them when I play them, but they're a nice way to spend like half an hour, depending on the specific level you're doing. So yeah, put them in okay. I sometimes had to look up how to proceed because it wasn't quite straightforward enough for me. But yeah, decent game. Then we've got Chess Valley, which essentially is like a chess puzzle game in the sense that you have a specific setup on a chessboard of figures, and you need to, with your figure, find your way through the chessboard without ever being on a tile that another figure could take you. And I think there was 50 levels you could do to beat the game, essentially. And I'm also going to put it in okay. I'd probably put it like here, because in its concept, it's very simple. It was definitely enjoyable for the time I played it, but it would probably be pretty repetitive soon because the levels are randomized too, so it's not like you could like make notes and then go through them and then you can continue, but you kind of get thrown a random level here and there, which is great at the beginning for longevity. Is that the right maybe it's not, but it's great at the beginning because it means you don't always start with the same level and you don't have to get through like 10 levels to get to where you didn't manage to get through it again. But after a while, you start getting to the point where you're like, failed at the 15th level again, forgot about that, or it was trying to be too quick because I was starting to get bored. So I was like, go, oh shit. And so there are some aspects, but it was less than €1 for the game. So definitely like worth the price in a sense for like an hour. And yeah, fits in the okay tier. Then we've got Chicken Police, which I'm still to this day slightly unsure of, because I did actually, I was so close to actually going back to it and fully playing through the game, but I decided against it in the end. I'd already like downloaded the game and started it up, but then I remembered, and that is something I really don't like about prologues or demos or anything like that. If they're a visual novel type game, like a story-based game where you have to, like, you can, and if they're pretty long in the demo, and I think Chicken Police was about an hour, if you then buy the full game and it's either slightly different, so they have to make you play from the start again, or it simply does not have an option to start where you left off. That's kind of like a point where I'm like, then I don't really want to play it, because I don't want to play through the same thing again, even if it's now slightly changed because it's not the prologue or the demo anymore and they've made some adjustments. It's just kind of and that's why I in the end decided against it. I did enjoy playing through the prologue though, so I'll put it here for now. It's close between being okay and good though. It's in that sort of space in between, but it's more on the good side than on the okay side. We then have Children of Silent Town, which I'm going to straight away put in okay as well. It's somewhere in here. It doesn't really matter too much. It was a nice little game, played about, I think, 40 minutes. I don't remember too much about it. I remember how it looked, but I don't remember what we were doing in it necessarily. It had some, as you can already see in the thumbnail here, some creepy undertones in the sense that there's probably going to be some mystery going on, but again, didn't get too far on that. Then we have Clanman 2 Open Mic. That one was another one, very close between good and okay, but I'll actually put it in okay. And I think the problem there was, for me now looking back at it, that it was just too long, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of a prologue, in the sense that we have another couple of games I think that kind of operate like that too, which is actually what I really like for a prologue, which is that it's a prologue that is separated from the main game, kind of like a pre-story. That's not really a word, is it? But you don't necessarily need to play it for the main game, but it's not going to be there if you do. So you can just ignore it as well. It's not going to be necessarily plot relevant. But if I were to play the actual game, which I'm not sure if it's out yet or if it'll ever come out, then I wouldn't necessarily need to play this pre-game essentially. But I think it took about 2.5 hours, and I was getting to the point where none of it is voiced, so I had to do all the reading myself, all the voices. And for 2.5 hours, that gets pretty tiring. And that was the main, bad memory I have of it. But the rest of it was a pretty decent game, yeah, so it fits into the okay category. We then have Cloud Climber, which is a bit cut off there to the left. But whatever. I'm also going to put it in okay. This one goes into okay because there's just not a lot of it. It took about 15 minutes. You're in a sort of a building project. Think Tower of Babel or something like that. Above the clouds, you can't really see below it. Everyone's dead. You're kind of like the only person left there, and it's kind of like that post-apocalyptic story in a way. It was definitely a nice, fun little game. A nice experience. There's not a lot game-like about it. It's kind of like a walking simulator in that sense. You find a couple of notes here or there. You can explore a bit. But yeah, that's mainly why it goes into okay, because it was literally like 15 minutes and there wasn't that much about it. Then we have Coffee Noir. And Coffee Noir, okay, I was very close to putting it in here, but I do remember playing it. I just had to think for about 5 seconds there to remember what the gameplay was actually like, which makes me kind of put it in here, because the gameplay was okay, but I could barely remember it, so it can't have been that enjoyable or great. And it was kind of just managing a coffee shop in a way. Maybe not a coffee shop. You're a detective, but kind of on the side, you're managing like a factory or something. I actually can barely remember. So it goes here. And have City of Gangsters, which by theme is very close, because you're a gangster, not a detective, but the setting is pretty similar, and you're also managing your gangster operations. And I'm also going to put it in okay, but I'm going to put it higher up around there. I played it for quite a while. I did then stop, though, before the demo would have ended. I did play for quite a while, though. It might have been an hour and a half. And it was certainly enjoyable, but I could also see it getting to a point where kind of like you're in a gameplay loop, and the gameplay itself wasn't that exciting, and you were just doing pretty similar things over and over again. And I imagine if I'd played for like another half hour, I probably would have gotten bored relatively quickly. Then we're going to go with Corpse Factory, which I'm actually going to put right here. Just not quite in Fantastic, but Corpse Factory is actually a game that I do plan on playing through in the near future, depending on when the actual game comes out, because when I played the game on Indie Sunday, there was, I don't know if it had already happened or if there was an announcement that it would be there, but there was a Kickstarter for it. And one of the extended goals from the Kickstarter was full voice acting. And I really liked the demo, but my one problem with it was it's a visual novel with a lot of text, with a lot of female characters, and there was no voice acting in it. So I needed the voice acting if I wanted to play through it fully, because I actually really enjoyed the story aspect of it. It has a nice mystery there, although the mystery itself may not have been, some parts of it weren't that mysterious, but it's not the who, it's more the how that you're trying to look at here. But I did enjoy that aspect of it a lot. And then the Kickstarter happened, and I got a lot of money, but just not enough for the extended goal of getting voice acting. So I kind of threw that idea out of the window again, and I was like, looks like I'm not playing through it. And then relatively recently, about a month ago or so, I looked back at the game page, and I realized they decided to go for it anyway. They got voice actors for it, so I will be playing through it. Most likely. Very likely. There might still be, who knows, but very likely I'll be playing through that. But I'm purely rating it based on the demo, and the demo didn't have voice acting, so I'm going to have to put it in good. We then have Crystal Project, which is also a very recent one, and I'm actually going to put that in fantastic, because I really, really enjoyed playing it. I might actually, I don't think I'll play more of it on the channel. It's not very likely that I will, but I might actually go and play some more of that just on my own in my free time when I feel like it. There are genuinely some games like that. There's not a lot of games like that, but there are some. And it's kind of like an RPG in a kind of like a 2D world where you can do a lot of exploring. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I can imagine some parts might be a bit tiring in the future, because at the start, essentially open world games like that are a lot of fun, where you run around, you explore new stuff, but you can eventually hit roadblocks where you're like, I don't know where to go now. I feel like I've explored everything, and there's this way that I can't go, and there's this way that I can't go. Help. So if I ever get to a roadblock like that, that probably wouldn't be very enjoyable for me, but there was no such thing in the demo. So I was having a lot of fun. So it goes into fantastic. We then have Cyber Manhunt. And honestly, I'm going to have to put it here. The reason for that is... Wait, no, now I remember. No, I don't remember. That was Minds Beneath Us. The reason for that is I actually generally do not remember much of the gameplay of it at all. So I can't put it anywhere else. I remember the thumbnail, I remember playing it, so maybe that's not entirely accurate, but that's about it. So I can't really put it anywhere else. I didn't dislike it. I know that much, otherwise I would remember it. But it was just very, yeah, meh. Okay game. I feel like the more I think about it, the more some aspects of it come back. And it probably would go in okay, but I'm actually going to put it here. We then have Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft. And I'm also going to put that into okay. Also kind of just like a walking simulator, similar in a sense to Cloud Climber. Also of similar length. It's a bit longer than Cloud Climber. And I did enjoy it a bit more as well. It had some nice aspects to it. The environments were relatively pretty, but it didn't have much longevity. There was a DLC announced, I think, that I thought I would play when it comes out. It hasn't yet, or at least I haven't realized that it had or has. But for now, it was okay. It was pretty okay. We then have Death and Taxes, which is going to go right next to it. And Death and Taxes was the kind of game where I thought, if you play this for 15, 20, 30 minutes, it's going to be super fun. But if you play it for longer than that, I feel like it's going to get repetitive very, very quickly, because you have a very short gameplay loop. that you go through repeatedly, which is essentially just you see profiles of people that could die, I think, where you're going to decide whether they die or not. And then you get some kind of like a requirement list of, like you got 3 men and 2 women, and the requirement list is like you have to kill at least 1 man or something like that. And then you just get to decide within those requirements of who gets to live and who has to die. And then you do that over and over and over again. There is kind of a story between, but I think it was actually pretty funny at times, but it wasn't much, so I can't realistically put it into good. We then have Demon Turf, which I am actually going to put into good, because it was pretty fun. It was is a jump and run, and I played through the demo of it, which is called Demon Turf Trials, I think, if I remember correctly. And I quite enjoyed it. I can't say too much about it anymore. I think there might have been some parts where I was stuck for a bit, but it never felt to me like an unreasonable difficulty. So it goes into good. I quite liked it. I might have to speed up a bit. Then we have Devil It's Me, which I'm actually going to put into bad. And it kind of hurts me to do that because I feel like it might not be that bad. But, well, if it were that bad, it would have never made it to video form. But there was something about it. I don't fully remember how it went, but where I just felt like I couldn't really progress, and it might have been completely on me for not doing things right. But then that in and of itself is also kind of on the game, where the game just then didn't explain it properly enough, in my opinion. Or it generally is that way, in which case I don't like the mechanic of it. So yeah, that ends up down here for now. Dinner with an Owl goes into okay, but it goes into a high okay. Another kind of visual novel puzzle point-and-click game, also point-and-click game than anything else, with a pretty fun storyline that I wouldn't want to spoil anything, so you can... That's definitely one... That's rather short, it's like 25 minutes, so that's definitely one of the rare ones where I'm like, it is in okay, yes, not in good, but if you've got 25 minutes, go and watch it. Pretty cool. Then we've got Dinosaur Hunter Fossil Prologue, or I think it's called something like that. Or it's Dinosaur Fossil Hunter Prologue. That way around makes more sense. And I'm straight up going to put it in okay, but at the very bottom of the list. Because I got so motion sick after about an hour. I think the core gameplay was fine. I did get stuck at a point after that hour where I did say at the beginning there was no game where I was like, this is so bad, I have to quit. There was this one specific game where I was like, I'm getting so motion sick and I don't know how to continue, so I'm going to have to quit. In another game, I probably would have been like, Steam forums or anywhere, like, how do I continue? I think I probably actually looked it up at the end anyway, and it didn't tell me. No one asked about it, so I was like, whatever. But up until that point, it was okay. Epistory, Typing Chronicles. Think I'm gonna move it right around here. It was pretty fun. Maybe slightly too many puzzles for my liking. But I do like the core concept, and we're gonna get to another game here that has the same core concept of you typing words and then beating monsters through that medium. And it's an okay game, yeah. Could imagine playing more of it in the future, potentially. Not on the channel, I don't think, but yeah, not bad, not bad. Then we've got Equaline, which I'm going to put right between those. And Equaline is essentially just a math game. That might sound very boring from the get-go. Probably is relatively boring to watch, but it was pretty fun to play. And yeah, that's about all I have to say for it. It wasn't very long in the sense that well, it's a math game. It doesn't have a storyline or anything like that. It has a couple of game modes that you can play, and they were quite enjoyable. So it goes into okay. Then we have Eversleep, Lunistus Gaiden, and I'm also going to put that, I think, into okay. And the main reason this goes into okay is that it didn't have enough gameplay for me yet in the demo for me to put it into good. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, Blind Drive, I don't know if it should be in good or if it should maybe go down to okay, but I don't want everything to be in okay. Because there are some games like definitely, okay, maybe I should just ignore the time. In which case, you know what, I'm going to put Dinner with an Owl and Eversleep into good. I'm going to put them down here for now. But I'm going to put them into good. Because Eversleep as well, it was actually a platformer that felt very nice to control. Similarly to Demon Turf, actually. With some exceptions, if I remember correctly, the very precise platforming felt a bit rough. But anything that wasn't like get on this tiny little pillar felt pretty good. So I'm going to put it in good. We then have Fights in Tight Spaces, the prologue. And that one was okay. I didn't enjoy it. It was kind of like a roguelike again, where there's another one later on that with Tetracube that has a pretty similar feel about it, where you control several pieces of, well, in this case, humans on a grid map, and you fight against enemies that spawn on them, and then in a roguelike system, so you go from room to room. And yeah, it was pretty okay. It was pretty okay, but also a game that I wouldn't necessarily want to play again. Then we have Find Love or Die Trying, which I'm also going to put in okay, but on the good side of okay up here. And pretty similarly to Corpse Factory, with one caveat about it, but also kind of a similar. It's not as, I wouldn't necessarily call it an out, but the thing is, Find Love or Die Trying already hints at, the die trying part, which essentially it's kind of like a dating show where if you don't like find love, you just get killed. And I never got to the more, to the second part of that. So if I had played this for, and I did already play it for like an hour or so, but if I had continued playing this for longer, I probably would end up in good. But having to rate purely the video itself would probably put it in okay. It's also not voice acted. It might actually, if I remember right, it might have like parts voice acted, like just like noises or the odd word here or there, but not fully voice acted. So it goes into okay. Then we've got Forgotten Fields. And I kind of feel bad because in a similar vein to some of the others that might end up in that category, with bad, I don't necessarily mean it's a bad game and the developer did something necessarily wrong. I mean, I didn't enjoy it. I played through it for like, I think 25, 30 minutes. And there was literally nothing where I was like, okay, I want to continue. Nothing. And that might be, which I think probably is the case, just because it's not really a game for me. But for the sakes of this ranking, I didn't have much fun with it, to be honest. Then we have Forward Escape the Fold, which I'm actually going to put right up there, and I think I'm actually going to put it here. Relatively recent as well, and that was a lot of fun, and I could definitely also see myself doing more of that. It's another roguelike, where you also kind of in a similar vein of, well, not necessarily, kind of think, how do I best explain this? You probably have to watch the video. Honestly, the game's quite good. And honestly, I have no way to explain this right now. Check it out. Pretty good game. Then we have Frog Fractions. And Frog Fractions is difficult for me to rate because I'm also going to give you a couple of background infos now. I actually played about 45 minutes or so of Frog Fractions, and then something went wrong with the video. I don't remember what happened to it, but I couldn't use it. So I had to play it again. But in between the time I played it and the time I realized that it was unusable, I looked up like, oh, is there actually anything past this initial stage of the game? And found out, yeah, it is actually. So I just, in the first part, essentially was 45 minutes of the first little part of the game. The second playthrough was, I think I actually completed the game, would have been like way longer. So it's difficult for me to rate it. I'm actually going to put it around here as well. It was pretty fun, but not anything outstanding. Gloria Victis Siege, I'm going to put pretty far down here, but still in the okay category. As far as I remember, kind of like it's a siege game in a sense that you are in a castle and you have to defend yourself from something or someone. I honestly don't remember too much about it. It was good fun for the 40 minutes or so I played of it, but again, didn't go back to it, probably wouldn't or will never go back to it. Then we have Grimm's Hollow, which I also don't remember too much about. I liked it, but I'm hesitating between putting it in good or okay. But I'm actually going to put it in good, solely for the reason that I remember it was about 2.5 hours long, and I played through all of it. And I don't think I was ever at the point where I was like, oh, please just end. My voice was probably getting tired for sure, but the game itself was pretty good. Kind of like an RPG Maker game, if that's like a closest reference. Probably wasn't made with an RPG Maker, or if so, like heavily adapted. But that's kind of what it felt like. And pretty decent, yeah, sure. Then we have got Guang Moon High School, Ghost Gate. And I'm going to put that down here in okay too. Visual novel, Korean, about high schoolers going back into school at night, and a horror game kind of like that. And it was okay, yeah, definitely. Would I play more of it? Probably not, but not bad for sure. Then we got Helltaker. As I said, we're going to ignore the anniversary update. And I'm going to put Helltaker into Fantastic as well. It was the game that started it all off. It was game number 1. And I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed Helltaker itself, and I enjoyed the anniversary update that we got later on. Both of them were about 1.5 hours. And pretty similar to, well, maybe not, but kind of like one of those games where you have to complete puzzles by moving other parts around. And frustrating at times, although considering the genre, which is not something I usually enjoy that much, I was actually very frustration resistant in a way that I could actually go and think about these things for like 10 minutes and still not be too annoyed by them. So that in and of itself is an achievement. The battle phases that you had then, where you had to like do precise movements to avoid enemy attacks and stuff like that, could get pretty frustrating. But again, not frustrating in the sense that you're like, oh, I don't want to play this anymore, I just want to get fucking rid of it. No, but frustrating in the sense that it's so close again. Come on, one more time. Just do it right. And it was more frustration at myself for making dumb mistakes than it was frustration at the game for maybe not, for maybe doing something annoying. Definitely a fantastic game. Go check it out. It's free as well, I'm pretty sure. So you can even play it for yourself. Then we've got Hermitage. Some sort of subtitle there, which I don't remember anymore. I think that might say Scholar or something like that. Case Files. A Sabotage Case Files, maybe something like that. I'm also going to put that in okay, somewhere in the middle there. Typical mystery visual novel that I played for about half an hour until the demo was over, and I quite liked the design of it, but I don't remember too much about the game's core mechanics. I don't think it actually presented many of them during the demo. So yeah, I don't think it's actually fully out yet. So that's another one where I've got an eye on it. Maybe if it turns out to... Actually, I think it got released recently, but it's not got many reviews yet. So if it turns out it's super cool, I might have another look into it, but other than that, probably not. Then got Hexseed, which I'm actually going to put into good, but on a very low end of it. Because there were some that was one game that really could have used, I don't remember if it had a tutorial at all, but it really could have used a good tutorial for some of the later mechanics, because I was genuinely confused and being like, how does this work? And I had to like basically reverse engineer, like I did that and then that happened. So what does that mean about the other things? It could have really benefited from that, because that, while sometimes that can be an enjoyable process, I didn't really feel like it was in this game. But apart from that, in its core gameplay, which is kind of like a Minesweeper type of thing, and I really like Minesweeper, was a good game for sure. And it had tons of content. That's also a plus as well. We then have Heart of the Woods, or Hearts of the Woods. I'm also going to put that where pretty much all other visual novels go, which is somewhere in the middle here in OK. Well, not all of them, but quite a few of them. Was pretty decent. Again, suffering from the fact that the demo didn't have voice acting, but the full game does. But will I ever go back to it? Maybe. Maybe at some point. It was pretty nice. It wasn't fantastic. It wasn't bad. It wasn't okay. Then we've got If on a Winter's Night for Travelers, which I'm actually going to also put into good. And let me put it around here. Basically, you've got 4 different storylines. You've got an overarching plot of people on a train, and then you kind of get to know, like, how did they get here? And some of them are vastly more interesting than others. But overall, I quite enjoyed the game. Also happened to be on the much longer side of about 2.5 hours. And I did get a bit tired of it at the end, but definitely a good game. Definitely good. Then we've got I Just Want to Be Single, the demo of that. And that is another game that I'm actually going to put right here. And it is another game that I might go back to and play more of it in the future. I think the full game's not out yet. But I really enjoyed the demo, with again the caveat that it wasn't really voice acted. Like after the hour that it was, roughly, it wasn't like, yeah, I think it was an hour and 16 seconds or so, the video. But after, like very close to the end, there was like one comic strip that was fully voice acted. But any of the normal gameplay wasn't. So I kind of like it if it was fully voice acted. But I enjoyed most of the characters. There was definitely some characters I didn't enjoy. Like if you you can see that the characters right here, I enjoy her a lot. I enjoyed her. I just genuinely like. I will have no strong feelings about her. She was fine too, and I didn't really like her too much. But overall, pretty good, and yeah, definitely possible that I'll play more of this. Then we've got In Her Eyes, which honestly I'm also going to put down there. I don't know, I didn't expect too much. It wasn't really enjoyable at all. I also didn't play very much of it, so maybe I just didn't get to the fun parts. But yeah, probably don't need to watch that, to be honest. Then we've got The Inheritance of Crimson Manor, which I'm going to put somewhere in the middle here. Also got motion sick of that one, because, of course, it had some interesting puzzles, but I also got stuck at the end, and I couldn't continue. So yeah, it goes somewhere in the middle here. Then we've got Inside, which also goes up here. I also didn't order these, really. If I were to order them, probably put it like this, kind of. Inside was a lot of fun. Like, as I said, a 3.5-hour game. I pretty much played through it in one sitting. That already says a lot about a game for me. And it's essentially, again, a 2D side-scrolling game. Well, it's not scrolling, but it's a 2D side-running game, in a sense. And it's like, it's not silent, but like you have no dialogue, I think. So you're entirely experiencing the story about what you're seeing, which I think is a good storytelling medium if it fits the game. And I think it definitely did fit the game here. And I definitely recommend anyone to either watch it or play it. Then we've got Knell of St. Godokar, which I'm going to put it right up here somewhere in the OK tier. Because the bit that I played of it, and I think I played about 35 minutes, was pretty enjoyable. again, I've said that probably a lot of times today. It was enjoyable. I might even go back to it at some point. But it wasn't anything outstanding. And in the future, there, I could definitely see the story ramping up. If it does, I'm all for it. Then we've got Kyle is Famous, which I'm honestly also just going to bonk down there in the middle on the OK tier somewhere. Pretty short game in a way that you can play through it multiple times and choose different paths, but the core game was relatively short. Was pretty good fun for 20 minutes, but would I go back and play more of it? Probably not. Then we've got Letters Written Adventure, which I'm also going to throw somewhere into the middle here in the OK tier. Cute little game. Again, probably wouldn't play more of it. There is actually a full game out by now that was just a demo, which I think was pretty short as well, like 15-20 minutes. And it wasn't bad by any means, so it wouldn't put it down there, but also didn't really give me much of a reason to come back to it. Then we've got the second game that I mentioned earlier when talking about Blind Drive, which is Lost in Blindness. So I'm going to have to put somewhere down here in OK. For two reasons. Actually for one bad reason. There's something good I have to say about it as well. Like the dialogues were actually pretty nice. It was like voice acted dialogues, obviously, because it's a game for blind people, so can't exactly do text. But I did get lost in one of the scenes. Purely based on hearing, I could not have completed that. So I did actually cheat in that game in the sense that in one specific instance, I tried to make it look like I didn't, but I did open my eyes and it did show you in a way like in black and white the outlines of the layout. And I couldn't have completed that scene purely by listening. Wouldn't have been possible for me. So that gets some negative points. You'll realize it when you watch the video probably, because Lotus Bloom is the next one. I'm going to put that relatively high up on the OK list, on the OK tier, because I do remember enjoying it quite a bit. I also don't remember too much about it. Kind of like a small little puzzle game where you have to connect flowers in a way, or connect like different points to make the flowers bloom. Decent game, for sure. Then we've got Lotus Reverie, which I think I'm actually going to put here, not in the fantastic tier. It was a game I really, really enjoyed, as evidenced by the fact that I actually played through the whole game afterwards, which wasn't very short. But there were definitely some negative aspects about it for me that hinder me from putting it into the fantastic tier. And I don't remember how much of it was actually in the demo or prologue that I played, but A was that the battle system wasn't great. It wasn't really much of a battle system, more so kind of like a puzzle, and it wasn't really a kind of puzzle system that I liked. Apart from that, the story itself I liked quite a bit. The way the story presented itself, I also quite like, in the sense that you have a main storyline and you have kind of side plots of like little side stories, and you get to a central hub, and then you've got a day basically, and you can complete either 2 main story parts or like 1 main story and 2 side story parts in a day, and then the game advances to the next day. And that in and of itself, I think, is a pretty good concept, pretty good type to present your storyline, especially for a mystery game that has some like more side aspects of a bit of character development, character exploration. Prologue was very, very long. I think it was about 2.5 hours before you got to the first hub. So I can't really, involve that too much in the rating process here. But very, very good game. Definitely recommend checking out my full playthrough of it as well. Then we've got Milk Inside of a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk. I'm going to put in okay. Decent game for 15 minutes. You help a girl get milk. Watch it, you'll understand it, or you won't. Either or, there is actually a sequel to it that I'm not sure if I've bought. I've put it on my wish list for sure. and it's quite a bit longer, and I might play that in the future as well. But for now, it goes into okay. Then we've got Minds Beneath Us, which I'm also going to put very high up on the okay tier. Good game. Also kind of like a 2D game where you move from side to side, and kind of like a mystery game. Had two different aspects, of which I vastly preferred the first aspect in the demo. Two different storylines in a sense. And yeah, I don't know, I don't know if that has released fully yet. I might have another look at that in the future as well, because it was really nice, but the second part was kind of long-winded in a way. So if it ramps up story-wise again and gets more like the first part, then for sure. Otherwise, probably not. Then we've got Motor Town Behind the Wheel, which I'm actually going to put like somewhere over here, because it was a lot of fun. I liked the driving mechanics in it a lot. It also has a time, what is it actually called? It's not time race or anything like that, but I don't remember. It's time trials, essentially, on different tracks. And I love going for like a good time there. I think I finished like top 10 in the world on 2 of the tracks, and got like 17 for something on the third one. It was really enjoyable just driving around on these tracks. The other gameplay mechanics of transporting goods, not my thing, but the purely time trial stuff I liked a lot. Then we've got Patrick's Parabox, which is the last one that you have perhaps seen from last week. And I'm actually going to put that in good as well. Going to put it right here, because it has a very interesting concept that I hadn't quite seen like it before, where essentially you've got kind of like a similar thing as in Helltaker, where you move pieces from place A to a specified place B, and you kind of have to see which way you're going to move them. Just in Helltaker, the piece you move are mostly yourself, and here you move in other boxes as well. And yeah, it adds the interesting concept of it having boxes within boxes that you can actually move into as well. Just watch it, you'll understand it. You'll probably like it if you like games with a similar theme like that. Then we've got Peculiar Tales of Mid-Lake Pavlion, which I'm going to have to put somewhere in the okay tier too. It's just another one of those games where I was like, got nothing else interesting. So actually, let me put it up a bit higher. Like, let me put it up around here. Because that's what it initially was, but it's a sort of a collection of short stories. I think a collection of 6 short stories. And the one I chose I found quite interesting. It was pretty fun. So I'll put it there. I don't know if the other stories are up to that standard or maybe even better, but I might check out some of those in the future if I'm ever again at a point where I'm like, don't really know what to play this Sunday. Then we've got Picross Touch. And I'm going to put Picross Touch around here, because it's difficult for me to rate this. I like Picross a lot. I played Murder by Numbers, which I definitely recommend watching as well. Picross Touch in and of... Actually, let me put it here, because it has got one fantastic mechanic that I actually don't think I tried much of. But you can create those Picrosses yourself and upload them to the workshop on Steam, so you can technically play others as well, which is a great mechanic. And it's just Picross, and Picross is fun. And we've got Plague Lords, which I'm going to put somewhere down here. Kind of like an RPG, wasn't that outstanding. I got stuck about 20 minutes in because I didn't really know how to proceed. Was okay. Probably not going to go back to it. Then we've got the prologue to Project Cat, which I'm going to put, again, somewhere around here. The 40 minutes it lasted was pretty decent. Again, kind of like, again, similar type of game to Grimm's Hollow in the sense that kind of like an RPG Maker type game. And not bad at all. Again, might look into the full game once it comes out. If it has come out already, then I've just not seen it. But yeah, pretty good. Punk Wars. Yeah, okay, it's still good enough for the okay tier. Let me actually move it up here. Yeah. Wasn't too enjoyable, kind of like a simulation building game where you use units, kind of like the Settlers type of game, was okay. I can feel my voice getting into trouble, so I'm going to move over the not great games a bit faster. Railroad, I'm going to put it somewhere in the middle here. Pretty good game, but I also got stuck at one point very late on where I felt like something wasn't quite explained well enough. Also, kind of don't remember it having too in-depth of a tutorial, which is really good in a game like that. You should have a tutorial. You shouldn't make it mandatory, but you should give everyone the opportunity, if they want to play through the tutorial. Probably not even do it like, because there's two types you can do it. You can either like have players click on new game and then it asks, hey, do you want to play the tutorial? Yes or no? Don't do that. Make it a separate menu point. Have like new game, tutorial. That way, you can always go back to the tutorial and play it again if you maybe didn't pay enough attention to it in the first place. And you can also just entirely skip it and don't even have to pay attention to it and can't by accident click yes, play tutorial. So yeah, I think it would have benefited from one there, but alas, got stuck in the end eventually, but it was good fun. Rain on Your Parade is an interesting one. I'm going to put it very high on the okay tier. I haven't gone back to it, said I might do. It was fun to play, for sure, but it's probably not a game that I'd play for a very long time. You could just kind of control a cloud and rain on people. There you have it. Raji, I think I might put like very far down on the okay tier because it was decent, but I don't remember much of it. I'm getting tired just thinking about it. Yeah. Not bad for sure, but Red Planet Farming also lands somewhere in the middle there. Kind of just, again, a simulation farming build-up kind of game. That was definitely for what it's doing. Pretty decent game. But again, haven't gone back to it or anything, so there it lands. Sacred Fire also goes into that tier. Kind of like an RPG, which actually has some interesting concepts in it, but I couldn't really see like a long-term motivation for me to continue playing it. I wasn't too interested in the story or any of those aspects. So here it lands. Then a very interesting one, which I don't actually... Oh, it's Saint Kotar, the Yellow Mask, which is essentially a prequel to Saint Kotar. Similarly to Backbone, not a very great reception for the full game, but this one in particular also didn't have too great of a reception for the prologue in and of itself, though better than for the full game, because it's definitely a bit jank in its gameplay mechanics. Some of the voice acting is very odd, and story-wise it had its interesting parts, but I can't with good conscience put it anywhere like above here maybe. But it was about a 2-hour-long prologue, and I did complete it, so I can't with good conscience put it into bad. Samsara Room goes like kind of right next to Cube Escape. It's pretty much the same thing, just in a different level essentially, and a bit longer. Then we've got Sector's Edge, which I'm actually going to put in good, because I quite enjoyed Sector's Edge. I never went back to it and played it again, but it was pretty fun. It was kind of like a shooter, and I liked the mechanics of it. It definitely took some getting used to. Like the first 2 or 3 games I played were awful in the sense of I got like no kills. But once I got into it, it was pretty fun for sure. The Life and Suffering of Sir Bronte, I'm going to have to put into fantastic. I played both the first 2 chapters on Indie Sunday and then went on to play the full game. The way the full game ended for me left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, but overall a fantastic game. I can definitely recommend you to watch it and play it, because there is actually quite a bit of, not customization, but quite a few different paths you can take along the line. Then we've got Sky, which I'm actually going to put in lower okay, because it's not bad, but there's also nothing particularly that I liked about it. It's got a very basic premise, and it executes that basic premise adequately. That's about the best I can put it. It's nothing special. You kind of fly around delivering things. A Space for the Unbound. Sorry, I have to put it in here. I remember like glimpses, but genuinely there's not a lot about it that I remember. So I'm gonna have to put it here. Again, I remember it wasn't bad. It wasn't fantastic. Probably I would have otherwise put it in okay, but I can't remember much about it. We've got Spies and Soldiers. I'm honestly gonna have to put that in here as well. Again, I remember like slight parts of it. Not enough to put it, actually give it a tier though. Then we've got Strange Horticulture. I'm gonna have to put it in okay, but it also goes very high up into the okay tier because I quite liked the core gameplay, the 45 minutes roughly that I played of it. It feels like unless there's a lot more story that just ramps up a bit later, I wouldn't have enough of a long-term motivation to continue playing it. But what I saw of it was pretty decent. So I'm into okay it goes. Then we've got Raft Boat, which also goes somewhere in the upper middle tier in okay. Pretty enjoyable little game, but not a lot else to say about it. It wasn't too long, although I don't remember if I even played the full game or if it was a demo or whatever. But not bad. Then we've got Siberia, the World Before, and the prologue for that, which also, let me put it somewhere up here. Definitely a bit jank. It was essentially, if I remember right, also kind of with, like Minds Beneath Us, split into two different story parts in a sense. And I like the second story part a lot more than the first. The second part was actually, story-wise, was really interesting to me. So that's a game that I could imagine if, like, a YouTuber that I like plays through it, I'd watch the second part. Or, you know, if it has more to do with the second part, I'd probably watch that. But would I play it myself? Maybe not. Then we got Tales from Off-Peak City. And I'm honestly going to have to put it in here. Like, it's a very, let me call it an experimental game. Probably, again, similarly to some of the others here, it's probably not a bad game, but it just wasn't for me, and I got motion sick as hell from it. No. Then we've got Tetracube, which I'm going to put somewhere in the middle here too. Decent little game, for sure. It was fun while I played it. Am I going to go back to it and play more of it? Probably not again. Kind of like, what did I compare it to? I think I compared it to something else at the beginning. What was it? Fights in tight spaces. Yeah, exactly. Similarly, where did I put that? Similarly to that, actually I probably preferred even, so let me pull that down here and let me do it like this. Then we've got The Supper. That's a difficult one. Actually, I said I wouldn't let gameplay time influence me, so I'm going to put it into good because it was a good game for me. It only lasted about 20 minutes. Very similar in terms of theme and style to Dinner with an Owl, and in concept maybe. So I'm going to put it in a similar tier. I enjoyed it about equally as much, maybe slightly less. That's why it's down here and not up there. And we've got the Vigil Villa, which I'm also going to put somewhere around here because I really thought about continuing it, but I haven't yet, and I don't know if I ever will. It was a pretty nice game though for the hour I played it, and I think I stopped playing it right before it got to the interesting part, or the first like main plot point. So maybe that would have elevated it on the list, but alas, I stopped before it. So it stays in okay. Then we've got Fear the Awakening, which I'm also just gonna plonk in the middle here somewhere. Decent game, but maybe I'll continue it at some point. Not fantastic, not bad. Nothing more to be said. Then we've got the Banner Saga, which is probably the only game that got two different parts that, looking back on it, I'm like, not sure. I was probably just like, I need videos for the next 2 weeks on Indie Sunday. It can't be, I don't have anything else. I'll just split this up into two parts. It was a decent game. but it probably stays in okay somewhere. Kind of like a strategy game with quite a bit of storytelling as well alongside it. Almost some, it's not really roguelike aspects, no, not at all, but you kind of go from point A to point B and you have a couple of steps on the way or stops on the way, that kind of aspect. And then, yeah, the strategy fighting, which was okay. Then we've got the Dawn, which I'm actually going to have to put somewhere in here. I never actually completed the last boss fight, but it actually, like, purely gameplay-wise, it felt, and mechanically, it felt really nice to play, which surprised me because I didn't expect it to feel nice to play, or not that much at least. So I definitely recommend, like, maybe watch the video, maybe see for yourself and play it for yourself. I think it was free as well, which, you know, that surprised me even more that it was halfway decent. Kind of like a shooter in a way, but yeah, it's not too long. I think it's about an hour, so just give it a look. Then we've got the demo to the house, the Horror of Salazar House, and it honestly goes in here as well, because I think the demo was like 10 minutes long, and I don't remember too much about it. We've got the Tenants, which I'm actually going to put in here somewhere. Actually, maybe even up here. It was a really good game. Kind of like, a bit like The Sims in a way, but you're mostly just, you're not actually buying houses and living in them with your family, but you're more so repairing houses and building them up for your clients. And yeah, it was pretty nice. I played it for a pretty long time, but I think you would have to start from a new playing the full game, so I was kind of again turned off a bit by that. Almost at the end, we've got the text assist, which honestly goes into a similar category to the Epistory Typing Chronicles. There were some aspects I liked more, probably story-wise and humor-wise, bit better on the text assist, although I don't think Epistory was necessarily going for a humoristic experience. But the control of text assist made it a vastly inferior typing game to Epistory, which, considering it is a typing game, feels like it's sort of missing the point slightly. Because you can't, like, in text assist, it feels much more like a skill game rather than just an enjoyable game, because you have to move as well as type, and it's I don't want to say it's too difficult, but it's a bit annoying to play, in my opinion, but it does other things well, which elevates it to about the same level. We've got Tiny Bunny, which is, I think, a Russian visual novel, and also honestly goes somewhere in the middle here. Was pretty fun. It had some, like, mystery, some slight horror elements that came through that I think were implemented pretty well. Was it amazing by any stretch of the imagination? Not really. Would I play more of it? Probably not. But for the time I spent in it, I wasn't bored. Then we've got The Tribe Must Survive, which I'm honestly going to put in good for now. And it feels like maybe I'm not sure about the longevity on this one. It might become boring after a while, but the part that I played of it, I really enjoyed. I think it only lasted, the demo only lasted for like 25 minutes again or something like that. But I had my fun. But it could get, if I were to play the full game, it could get repetitive relatively quickly, but it wasn't yet repetitive while I played it for those 20 minutes, so there you go. Unnatural Disaster also just falls into the middle of the okay category. I had my fun with it for about 20 minutes. It wasn't great, wasn't bad. Burbex City Builder, on the other hand, is kind of, I'm going to put it in the upper tier here. And I feel like it might end up in a similar state as The Tribe Must Survive, in that it might get repetitive. I generally, city build is also not something I enjoy once it gets to the stage where you've got like 17 different things you need to have an eye on, like city skyline or something like that, where you need a fire department and you need electricity and you need water supply and you need, I don't know, 17 different kinds of everything, and you need to keep an eye on everything, and you sometimes you need to rebuild the whole city if you didn't pay attention to something at the start that would need to be placed there. And that's why I generally don't find city builders to be too much fun. But again, I enjoyed my 50 minutes with it. Then we've got Victorio, which I'm gonna put pretty high up here. And it was definitely also fun as well while I played it. It felt like it would have benefited from, in the end I died, and I felt like I would have benefited from, another run with more experience and knowing what I'm doing. But again, I had my fun in the 40 minutes maybe that I played it. So it was a pretty good game. Definitely recommend as well if you like that kind of game, check it out. Kind of like tower defense in a way. Then we've got Warm Snow. And I'm going to put it around here as well. I liked the mechanics of it. I liked how it felt. I didn't get past like the second boss or something like that. So if you want a difficult game, probably like check out like 10-15 minutes of my playthrough, or check out like a trailer for it on Steam or somewhere before you decide whether you want to buy it or not. But if it looks like it's your kind of thing and you like more difficult games, and I say that now, probably someone's going to be like, I beat everything on first try. It wasn't difficult at all. Yeah, whatever. But if you like games like that, maybe give it a try. Probably going to be... Actually, I think it was relatively well received. It got like... I think it got pretty... quite a lot of reviews, way more than I expected a game like that to get. But yeah. Then we've got the indie game that wasn't actually an indie game, with Shuen Yuan or something like that, which I later learned I apparently didn't double check well enough at the beginning on whether this was actually an indie game. So I'm actually going to put it here out of... Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave it down there out of competition. It was actually quite kind of nice to play, but not an indie game, so it stays down here. And then the last game to finish us off, my voice is really struggling at this point, was Yuha's Nightmare, which I'm actually going to put like somewhere in the middle here. Yeah, it was kind of interesting, very surreal experience, also free as well. So if you want a very surreal experience, go for it, try it for yourself. But yeah, I think overall, I'm pretty happy with that. So we had some real gems in there, some fantastic games, some very good games that I also could and will in some instances continue playing. A lot of okay games, but that's just how it is. That's what I had in mind with Indie Sunday to begin with, is that everything that looks halfway decent or interesting, I'm just going to give it a go. Knowing fully well that a lot of it won't be that great. But just to find those little gems here or there, I'd be willing to invest like an hour every week into finding new little games. And that makes sense that a lot of it is just okay. And then we didn't have that many bad games looking back. There were some where I'm like, I really don't want to be playing this right now, but I've finished like 20-30 minutes and then I'll upload it. That's fine. And yeah, some were pretty forgettable looking back on it. But yeah, if you want to, you can do your own tier list of my Indie Sunday videos. I'd love to see those. So if you do, like, save them down here and then send me like a link of the image. I don't know if YouTube will allow it in the comments, but otherwise send it to me on Discord. You should probably be able to find that. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little special here in the 100th week of Indie Sundays. It was quite nice for me looking back at all of the games. Although I do kind of like occasionally go back over the playlist and kind of like see, not think too much in depth about them, but see what happened and all of that. But quite nice to just talk about some of them again, and yeah, maybe give you some recommendation on which ones would be fun videos to go back and watch if you haven't seen them yet. So anyway, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.